Okay, Mr. Mayor, we should be live and ready when you are.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Soldovia City Council for Monday, September 13th, 6 p.m. We'll go ahead and do roll call. Sweat. I know she's here because I just saw her. Bobby, you there? All right, we'll come back to her. Kohlberg.
Here.
Morrison. Rojas.
Here.
Peyton.
Here.
Nathan.
Here.
Okay, Bobby, can you hear us? All right, well, we'll mark her as here because I know she's here because I just saw her. If everyone will go ahead and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have no excused absences tonight. We'll go ahead and look to get a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda of September 13th, 2021.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda by Rojas, second by Kohlberg. All those in favor, Sweat. Okay, Kohlberg. Aye. Morrison.
Aye.
Rojas.
Aye.
Peyton.
Aye.
Nathan.
Aye.
Okay, motion is approved 5-0 with no vote from Sweat. Tonight's consent agenda, all items under the consent agenda are approved with a single motion, no discussion, and one vote. Council member may request to remove any item for discussion and a separate vote. Tonight's consent agenda consists of item 1, the approval of minutes. There's 3 sets of minutes from the special meeting August 2nd, the regular meeting August 9th, and minutes of another special meeting on August 16th. We also have item 2, ordinance introduction, ordinance 22-03, an ordinance to the City Council of the City of adopting a recodification of Soldovia Municipal Code to include ordinances enacted during fiscal year 2021 for Title II, Title 17, and Title 18. And then 2B, ordinance 22-04, an ordinance of the City County of Soldovia, Alaska, amending Soldovia Municipal Code 2.52.020 types of employment. Does member at this time wish to pull out any of these items to discuss separately? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Make a motion to send.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to approve tonight's consent agenda with a second by Kohlberg. All those in favor, Sweat. Okay, Kohlberg,
Aye.
Morrison,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Nathan.
Aye.
Okay, tonight's consent agenda passes 5-0. Item F, mayoral proclamations. We do have a proclamation tonight. Proclamation 22-02, honoring the community contributions, efforts, and green thumb of Susie Stranick. And we were hoping she'd be here tonight. I don't think she's online, but I'm going to go ahead and read tonight's proclamation. Again, honoring the community contributions, efforts, and green thumb of Mrs. Stranick's community contribution, the city's public places would not be as cheerful, bright, and vibrant as they are. And whereas Mrs. Stranick organizes and leads other volunteers from within and outside the community to focus their time and attention to enhance Soldovia's small town charm and character. And whereas, aside from her time, Mrs. Stranick has contributed her own financial and material resources in order to enhance the city's public spaces, an example of which is the boardwalk bordering the park on Main Street. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor of the city of Seldovia, on behalf of the Seldovia City Council and its citizens, honors the community contributions, efforts, and green thumb of Susie Stranick. Be it further resolved that the city of Seldovia will work with Mrs. Stranick to name the park on Main Street in her honor. And I would like to personally thank Susie for everything that she's done. We see her out there quite often with herself, with woofers, with other volunteers, constantly working on areas all over town to visually beautify and improve our town. And again, it's small town charm and everything that goes with all the flowers and the plants and stuff. So much appreciation on that. And again, we were hoping she'd be here tonight, but we will pass this on to her in person. Not sure if anybody else has any additional comments or anything.
Mr. Mayor.
Sure, Vivian.
Yeah, I'd just like to congratulate her, and it's too bad she isn't here, for her hard work and dedication to her passion. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd also like to just say thank you to Susie for everything mentioned and all the things that she does at 11:30 at night when we don't see her. Because if you're out walking, you will see her doing things.
True. Thank you.
She's
Harmony.
amazing.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for that, and we will pass that on to Susie. Item G, public presentations prior notice. Do we have anybody? No one signed up? Okay. Item H, public presentation for items not on the agenda. Anyone from the public wish to speak tonight for items not on the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a Miss Laurel Hiltz.
Okay,
Hi, Mr. Mayor, if you can hear me okay?
yep, loud and clear, Laurel.
All right, thank you so much. A couple of things. One, I concur and actually do thank the city council for recognizing Susie Stranick's volunteer efforts and financial contributions to the beautification of Seldovia. And it's an incredible thing that's done. And so I really appreciate the city stepping up to really recognize that. So thank you. Also, just kind of recapping our summer season here in Seldovia. It's been obviously a remarkable one in the numbers of people that we were seeing come into the community, in the I think the enthusiastic spirit that people had, and also the small businesses that were doing their best to bring new things to the community, from golf carts to car rentals to clothes for sale along Main Street, the whole thing. So I just think it's a great effort, and a shout out to the Chamber of Commerce for their ongoing efforts. I did want to say that the Chamber is going to look for this next calendar. Well, I guess the year starting now, we just had our new elections, and our intent is to have one meeting in person, and then the next month be a Zoom meeting where we can have different business representatives come and share via the online capabilities, so that we can help and enhance our small business owners here in Seldovia with tips and pointers, from insurance to managing staff to banking and loans and marketing and all of those things. And I'll be working to put together 6 presentations that will take place over the next year. And if you have any business person that you think would be a great asset to the community to share, let me know, and I'll work to get them on the schedule. And then on the opposite months, our goal is to get ourselves into some of the local restaurants again, now that the season has settled down, and try to share some business there as well. So looking forward to that. And then just in general, you'll note in the city manager's report that it talks about Seldovia Village Tribe and our continued efforts in regards to the COVID pandemic, and where things are at with numbers and the reporting of numbers. And I did want to say that we are no longer issuing a press release to say, hey, there's one new case that's occurred, but we do continue to put that on our website. So when a positive has occurred, the community is informed. But folks can still reach out to the public health for additional information if they have it available. And then on my last note, and I was kind of doing the summer recap, and I didn't mention that Seldovia Bay Ferry, we're celebrating 17,000 individual one-way tickets, people traveling this year. So that's by far just an outstanding season. And I think that we're really proud to be able to provide that service to the community. And we did it in a safe way, a healthy way, and really excited about that. So when we step back and we look at COVID in Seldovia, we had a definite outbreak that occurred. The very good news is that for the majority, folks contained that. And after a few weeks, we didn't have any continuing spread from that initial outbreak that occurred in, mid-July, and a few more cases in late August that were directly related to travel. But none of those are continuing to carry out into the community. And so I think, a great effort on everybody's behalf that they're keeping things contained. And so I would just really encourage the city council to take a look at the current masking policy that is in place at the city level, because with the mandate relating to having to be masked when in city properties, that basically is a direct link to the school requiring universal masking. And I think right now, if we look at the numbers in the community, we haven't had community spread at this point in time going on. And it'd be great to see that that those masks can come off, especially when kids are in the gym and they're playing and they're being active, and having to wear a mask is just kind of weird. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Laurel. Appreciate those comments. Anyone else online that wishes to speak?
I'm not seeing any at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Anyone in council wish to speak? Okay. We'll go ahead and move on to item I, Community Advisory Board reports. We have Walt Sonnen here tonight. Yeah, we'll give you a microphone.
Just a quick update, Mr. Mayor, from Councilmember Sweat. It looks like she's not able to see our video feed. Everything on her end is just spinning, so she may have to leave the meeting. For this
Oh,
evening.
gotcha. Okay.
Okay, I'm Walt Sonnen. I am the city's representative to CERCAC, the Cook Inlet Citizens Regional Advisory Council, which has to do with overlooking oil operations in the inland. And we have 3 meetings a year. This is try again 3 for the Seldovia meeting. The first one was canceled. The autumn or the fall meetings rotate among Kodiak, Seldovia, the other meetings that we have in the year in Kodiak and Anchorage. That pretty much covers all the members that are in the organization. The first meeting that was scheduled here was canceled because of the water shortage, and the next 2 have been canceled due to COVID. So I call it again, try again, 3 meetings. So this meeting, like the last 2, or the one last year, were held via Zoom. More than a year ago, the new commissioner of the ADEC, Jason Bruni, approached our group and announced that there were going to be a number of changes in the regulations that had to do with SPAR. SPAR is the spill prevention spill prevention and recovery portion of the DEC. And in the meantime, there has been a new director of SPAR, and she spoke to us for about 45 minutes, extremely detailed report of the changes in the regulations that will be forthcoming on the 1st of November. And the CERCAC organization was very concerned that these changes might involve some streamlining to decrease their effectiveness, and we are assured that this is not to be the case. So I will have to wait till the 1st of November to see what these changes will be, and then there will be a 90-day comment period, at which time I'm sure the CERCAC folks, our staff, and committee members will take a look at. We had a presentation from Hillcore, and there are 3 undersea pipeline replacement projects that are either have just been completed or underway, where pipeline has been identified as being weak, or new pipes being put into service different newer needs. And we learned that both the state and the federal government will be offering more oil exploration leases in the inlet in the near future. Perhaps you have heard of a ongoing oil leakage in Women's Bay in Kodiak. We've heard a report about that. One note that's interesting there is that there has been, to date, there's been $3 million spent on the recovery of that spill, and it hasn't been sealed off yet. There's still some tanks on the vessel of the St. Patrick to be pumped out. They haven't gotten access to. We had a report from CISPRI, the Cook Inlet Spill Response Organization that takes care of the oil spills in the inlet. Anyone that works in the inlet must be a member of this organization, and that's how it's funded. The barge that's in the bay right here, we call it the 141. It was here for years, up until a few years ago, but it's come back. And the barge in the bay is currently a part of the contingency plans that CISPRI has. So it is an active asset for spill recovery. We also talked about a lot of committee activity, and one of the things that that CERCAC does that I don't think most folks realize is that there is an awful lot of scientific study that goes on within the organization about current flow, oil spill trajectory, sediments, and that kind of thing. And a lot of this stuff is done at the facility out the road, which certainly must play a little bit of well, enhances our economic activity, I guess, because these people come to town and do business in town. I don't think that that is generally realized, but there's an awful lot of stuff that happens out there. One of the things that CERCAC does is there are a number of cameras in the inlet that assist marine traffic, particularly with in icing conditions, and these cameras are maintained by CERCAC, and these assist all NOAA, the oil traffic in the inlet, Coast Guard, and whatnot. I don't know. I could answer questions if anyone has anything on that. These meetings last for hours and hours, and it's pretty hard to try to give you a synopsis of everything there. And I'll put on a different hat, if you. I'm the president of the local SOS oil spill recovery organization, and we haven't been too active because of COVID and getting together kind of thing. We were to have an exercise later this week in coordination with CISPRI. It was supposed to be a big event, going through a lot of the boom and machinery that we have down the street in various connexes, but Todd Paxton at CISPRI notified us last week that he was not going to come down here due to COVID, because apparently his organization has experienced a lot of COVID problems, and he didn't feel that he wanted to be active in any sort of a community activity here. We had planned a community lunch and whatnot, and part of the reason was that we, as a SOS organization, are looking to recruit. We're losing people because they're aging out, if you will. We've lost 3 of our pretty active members here in the last 6 months or so. But we are planning a SOS sponsored activity this Saturday, where we're going to try to get all the machinery that we have down there going, and look at compatibility of hoses and make an inventory of some of our stuff. That's pretty much it. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Walt. Any questions, comments from council?
Yeah, Mr. if I may.
Yep, go ahead, George, and I'll get you, Vivian.
Okay, looking at the information we have in our packet, it says this boat, the St. Patrick, was moored from 81 to 89 before it sank. And that the reason the spill is showing up is because the deterioration of the tanks and rivets and so forth. How come we didn't boom this thing off right after it sank and try to do something about recovering?
Well, I don't know if you recall of St. Patrick. It immediately struck me that, because I remember the incident quite well. It was a factory processor fishing boat, and they got into some rough weather, and there were some electrical problems, and I don't know, but the boat started taking water on. The captain ordered everybody to jump over. And many of the people that jumped over didn't even have survival suits. And there were 2 survivors, and one died shortly thereafter, I believe. The one survivor is still alive today. I think there were 14 people on board. So the whole thing was tragic to begin with, and it was moored in Women's Bay. And I believe that's the same bay that Coast Guard is based in Kodiak. It's a large bay, and it was probably still had the list to it, and it was there for 8 years, and it sank. And there is no responsible party, so this $3 million is on tax dollars, I guess, for the spill recovery. And why it was there, I don't know. There were some questions asked at our meeting about would this type of thing happen today? That a boat would just sit there with thousands of gallons of fuel on it and not be pumped out. And there were no definitive answers as to whether the Coast Guard had the authority to do so or not. But it seems like an ongoing question, because the state's plagued with these older vessels that are abandoned and no one owns them. And so one of the things that I think that becomes very apparent is that each vessel needs to have a responsible party, someone that is responsible for the vessel itself and its activities. So beyond that, I really.
Well, my question is couldn't your organization just boom the thing off and without it violating anybody's constitutional rights, and at least that spill would be contained? And then once it actually started becoming a problem, maybe we could encourage Coast Guard to do something about it. But it seems like what are you talking 35 years ago that it sank?
Right. I really can't answer your question.
Thanks.
Hey, Walt, how deep of water is it in? How deep of water? How deep is it where it sunk?
I don't know. They've got divers going down to, hook up hoses to pump out the fuel and that kind of thing.
I would almost think that the Coast Guard would be responsible where it's an abandoned navigational hazard. Wouldn't the Coast Guard be responsible to clean that mess up? I mean, if it don't belong to anybody, isn't that the Coast Guard's job to make our navigable waters safe?
Well, exactly who is paying for it, I don't know. There is a fund that is paid through a tax of a penny and a half a gallon that is sold in Alaska, and that is to address these spills where there isn't a responsible party. And I think that $3 million is coming out of that fund. And the Coast Guard doesn't actively do cleanup stuff. There are several organizations, private organizations that are doing the cleanup. Shadow is one of them.
Thank you.
Vivian, you had a
Yep.
comment?
Yep. Thanks, Walt, for your presentation and your information. Could you, the barge that sits out here, which comes and goes, that barge is CISPRI, that's available to CISPRI or CERCAC? Could you explain? So is the barge always there all winter? Sometimes it disappears and I think, okay, where to go now? So could you explain to me what the barge situation is out there?
CISPRI owns that barge. It is there. It has like 260,000 barrel capacity for holding spilled oil. And what it would be used for is that it will go to an oil spill and act as a reservoir for the cleaned up oil and oily substance. And it has spill equipment on board as well. And it's just there for emergency use.
Okay, and then,
There are two more barges similar to that. One is a larger barge. It's in Seward right now, being worked on. There's a smaller barge up at McKiskey, or either that or it's off the Homer Spit. I'm not sure where it is right now.
okay, so this stays here year round, and then there's a tugboat or something that comes and checks on it every now and then. Is that what the deal is? Or are you guys, is SOS any part of working with them on that or no?
Yeah, you'll notice probably every week or two, probably every 2 weeks, there's a larger vessel that
Yeah.
comes and gets all the engines going and
Oh,
that kind of thing.
okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vivian. Any other questions, comments for Walt? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, well, on these new regs that are coming out, they'll come out in November and then you have 90 days to comment on them. Is it going to be another year or so before they become effective after that, or?
Well, I think they become effective after the 90-day comment period.
Okay,
These are just revised regulations. And so we're sort of waiting to see how it comes out, because CERCAC is pretty concerned that they're going to dilute the regulation. And these regulations have been amended and added to for the last 30 years since Exxon Valdez, and CERCAC feels that the regulations as they stand now are very effective. But then gone over the fine-tooth comb, but we will see.
okay. I was just thinking, the way it's worded, it seems like it's backwards. You would have the comment period before the regulations come out, so that part of it could be dealt with before it becomes a regulation. Because it doesn't do any good to have a comment period after you've already changed the regulation.
I guess I didn't hear you. You asking me a question?
I was just saying, it doesn't make sense that they're going to change the regulation and then have a comment period. There should be a comment period. Should be allowed to see the changes in a comment period and then change the regulation. But in this case, they've changed the regulation and then going to give you a comment period, which is backwards. It won't do any good to have a comment period if they've already made the changes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably like any other regulatory process, though. Those are probably draft. The changes come out in draft. Public has an opportunity to comment, and then the powers to be would come back and then promulgate the regulation and get it through the system and out in place. So, and that's where the public process would come into play. So if I understand that all correctly. Yeah. Yep. Yep. All right. Well, thank you, Walt. Appreciate your presentation tonight. Always good information, lots of stuff going on. So thank you for presentation from CERCAC and NSOS both.
All right.
Appreciate that. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item J, administrative reports. The first one up tonight is J1 finance report. This will be in your packet under page 25. Is you gonna take this or is Jan gonna take this? I don't see Jan on.
I can just comment on behalf of the finance officer. So this, and instead of providing council with all of those numerous spreadsheets, we're still working on a new format that gives council more of a bird's eye view where the financial status of the city for FY22 is more understandable. So that's a note that you'll see underneath her notes section in her finance report. And so hopefully we'll give council a little bit more information than what you're seeing here tonight. But it'll be something more condensed like this. And then of course, staff on a quarterly basis meet with the council to give a more in-depth presentation about their departments. But I'd say that for the finance report, it's important to note too that we've received our first tranche of ARPA funds. We received the 33,191. And in an upcoming resolution, we're going to talk about moving those funds over to AMLIP. So that way restricted grant funds don't commingle with unrestricted funds at the city. So that'll be something that's coming up. And then if there's any other questions that council has on the finance report, I can try to take it. Otherwise, pass it on to Finance Officer Yeager, and she can follow up with you guys at a later date.
Thank you, Rachel. Any questions for the city manager on the finance report tonight? Okay, we will go and move on to item J2, Chief of Police report. This will be on page 27. And we do have the chief in attendance tonight. Clayton, did you want to give us just a little overview or anything?
Sorry, I don't have really anything to say. It's just when there, I wasn't prepared. Didn't think we were giving it today, so sorry. If you have any questions about it, just what's written down.
Okay, any questions for the chief? Okay, I just had, I see you've got noted here. Yeah, things starting to wind down. You obviously had a pretty busy summer, lots of interesting things going on this summer, and hopefully we'll start to get back to our small community, less exciting stuff going on. So, all right. Let's see here. Item J3, Harbor Masters report. That'll be on page 28.
And Mayor, if I may, just as a reminder, so the reports are provided typically at the second meeting of the month, but because we didn't have a second meeting in August, that's why council's seeing the report for the first meeting in September. And then on a more quarterly basis, or near that, we have all of staff come. So for now, they just provide you the written report. And if you have specific questions, I can follow up with them directly. Otherwise, it's just for council to read, and then we'll have a more thorough presentation at a later date.
Okay. Sounds good. Any questions or comments on the Harbor Masters report? Okay, we'll go to item J4, Maintenance Public Works report. That's on page 30. Okay, any questions, comments on the maintenance report?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Pearlie.
I see Johnny hauling more barrels down there. Where all them barrels are stored and by the value added building. What's in them barrels and what are we gonna do with them? Or are they just gonna sit there and rust and leak on the ground, or what is the thing with them barrels?
Through the mayor, that's a great question, Councilmember Morrison. So we had the hazmat waste barge come through Soldovia this past Friday. And Public Works staff were working in conjunction with the harbor master to get the waste consolidated. And so this year we were able to dispose of 3 55-barrel drums of not just waste oil, but watery gobbledygook, so to speak, of substances. We're not sure what they are, because if it's just fuel or old fuel, we can reuse that in our Public Works maintenance shop. So we were able to dispose of that in addition to oily rags and batteries and other hazmat related stuff collected at the harbor. And I would have liked for the city to have been able to dispose of more waste, but it costs about $450 a barrel to dispose of waste on the hazmat barge. So we were able to get the first chunk of it taken care of. And then next year, we're going to budget for more. And Johnny Gruber has been consolidating the barrels and the waste in the barrels. So that way we can store them and then get them ready for the hazmat barge next year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pearlie. I just had to, George, did you have something?
Yeah.
Okay,
but
yep, go ahead.
If
First.
I could, do we not still have a waste oil heater in the maintenance shop? So is there, I mean, can that use some of the waste oil that we're collecting at that you're putting on the barge?
Through the mayor, council member Nathan. So what went on the barge, we could not burn
Okay.
at the city maintenance shop. Anything that we can burn, we do. But the unknowables, the gobbledygook where it's mixed with water and who knows what else, we've been disposing of that on the barge.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, George. Yeah, that was a question when myself and the manager met this morning that I had too, because I know we've got the waste oil burner down there. And yeah, there's a lot of contaminated barrels that aren't just nice, clean waste oil, just gobbledygook, I think was the word you used. So sounds good. Sludge, et cetera. One comment too I noticed, and it's in here, is the maintenance yard cleanup out the road. That looks like that is starting to finally happen with getting in there and getting rid of alders and getting access to all of our stuff. And I'm sure throwing stuff away and getting the stuff out there that's good. So I'm glad to see that finally happening. And just back to the hazmat deal, I probably got rid of 30 gallons of stuff. Again, I've taken advantage of that every year. And I think that's, I mean, even more, we should even target the community to be in terms of awareness even more, that when that thing is going to happen every year. I don't know if we had that on the city's website or not. Did we have it on there? Okay. But yeah, that is an incredible program for homeowners and residents to be able to dispose of, all your old paints, any unknown chemicals, even known chemicals that you're not going to use, free of charge. So that is a super good deal for our community to be able to take advantage of it. I'm glad that the city also is taking advantage of that. And it's a great time to schedule in advance for next year. Just again, like you say, budget what we have to, that's the easiest we're ever going to be able to get rid of our hazardous waste and dispose of any of that stuff. So that's good. Any other questions, comments on the maintenance report?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I can ask a question following up on that.
Yep.
So the city is charged, because it's a municipality, to anybody else, it's free to put your stuff on. So how do they determine the charge of the city?
I'm not sure through the mayor, council member Rojas, how they determine the fee, but it's based on a price per gallon. And I want to say it was either $5 or $8 a gallon to dispose of waste.
Oh, so it's anything other than private individuals they must charge for then? I didn't know they did that. Really? Okay. All right. Thank you. It is a great service. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead, Burley.
Does the city have some kind of a separator that they use to separate the oil from the water?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Morrison, we had to buy a pump and staff did that in-house. I can ask them for more details on how they did that and share that with you at the next meeting if you'd
Well,
like.
It's pretty simple unit to make. I've used them in the past. Just a spigot on the bottom and you dump everything into there. Water settles to the bottom and oil always floats. You just drain it off until you start getting the oil and then shut it down. And what you should have left is straight oil. Just takes that water out of it. So I just wondered if you guys had something like that. That's all.
Okay.
We certainly could filter out the impurities for a lot less than $8 a gallon, I bet.
Yeah, it might just be a plan, just getting with the guys and figuring out what kind of volume we have too, to see what we have. And just going forward, having a little more knowledge for next year, just to see if there's anything we can do to streamline that process.
I would think for the oil burner, it would almost be essential. You wouldn't want to be dumping a bunch of water into there for that drip system. But anyway, I think it'd be worthwhile to get something set up.
Okay, any other questions, John? Go ahead.
Yeah. Once they get rid of everything that's an unknown collected from over the years, they could keep track of what stuff is in what drum. And like Burley said, they could use the separator and get rid of water, and everything they can burn would be available. You don't want to be burning anything you don't know what it is to begin with.
Yep, true.
So
I might, one
Something
more
for
comment,
future.
my big, I'm sorry, John. My big fear is the bottom is rusting out of some of the barrels that have been there for quite some time. That'd be a mess to clean up a whole bunch of oils. Expensive too.
Yeah, I think that's why it's a good idea to start getting rid of all this stuff. And I'm glad to see proactive approach on this. So, yep, thank you. All right, item J5 city clerk's packet, and that's on page 33.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go
So
ahead.
you'll just see on page 33 is a notice of election for the coming October 5th, 2021 election. Talking about there being two council member seats for the 3-year term, one council member seat for a 2-year term. Proposition, the polling place, polling hours, and absentee voting. That's been posted on the website, Facebook, and various locations across town, the normal locations. Just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of it, that's coming up. And then the following page 34 is the notice of absentee starting at 10 a.m. on September 15th. Individuals can come into the city office and vote absentee if they wish, or they can request a by mail ballot. And that application for the absentee ballot can be found on the city website, or it's located at the city office. And then one more update, due to the updates in the election code, we are asking Miss Christine Cashavera to step in and take the place of Kate Holman-Billmeyer as a judge. Miss Holman-Billmeyer will still be an alternate, but we're gonna have Miss Cashavera take that third spot as an election judge in order to fulfill the requirement in code now set that they need to be registered voters of the city of Seldovia. So that'll be Greg Wolfer, Kathy Giles, and Christine Cashavera. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Any questions or comments for the city clerk? Okay, thank you for the reports. Appreciate that. Item K1, resolution 22-09. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, reaffirming the city's declaration of public policy is found under Seldovia Municipal Code, Chapter 2.48. Equal Rights Commission and the ADA policy statement is found under Seldovia Municipal Code, Chapter 2.49, City of Seldovia ADA policy statement. This will be found on page 35 of your packet, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. And then I would like to in turn turn it over to the resolution sponsor, Councilmember Rojas.
Thank you. Yes, I brought this forward and thank you to the staff for helping me with it. Some events happened in Seldovia that brought my attention to perhaps our old ordinance that I believe needed to be updated to reaffirm the city's position on equal rights and ADA for all individuals. And so to me, it was something I thought was important that the community knows that that the city feels very strongly about equal rights for all and ADA individuals. So with that being said, I'm happy to see this in front of us. And again, I thank the staff for it. Just that the community knows how the city is very much aware of its position with our community and how we need to represent and be above board and everything. I'm also at later date, I would like to see us include in our ordinance to also include the sexual orientation brought in there and gender identity brought in. And so we can work on that later in the year, I hope. But I thank staff for helping out without helping with this. And it was old language, and I think we need to get it above board and in current language. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Okay, go put it up to council for discussion. Any questions, comments from council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, George.
what are the ramifications to businesses in the city from this ordinance or the reaffirmation of where we are? Are we going to require more ramps? I know we built an elevator in the city in this building because all this. What is there some fallout for businesses in the community as a result of this, or does this expand on what we already have?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Nathan, no, it doesn't change anything that's already in place. So it's just reaffirming the city's position. But you bring up excellent points, and it is worth, I can't speak to the ADA requirements for facility construction and improvements, but that would be something that a business should look at. I saw an article in the New York Times about businesses being taken to court over not having adequate ADA facilities. So that is something that all businesses should keep in mind, and the city does not regulate that. I could see the Kenai Peninsula Borough providing insights if a business were to ask about that, but no, this doesn't change anything. It just reaffirms the city's position and what we already have in code.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Harmony.
Thank you, Vivian, for bringing this forward and for taking the steps to update the language here to include all the varying individuals that create or thank you, Vivian. I just as far as ramps go, I can't think of a single facility in our community that doesn't have an appropriate ramp in front of its business. Maybe one. Anyways, thanks. Look forward to more updates to the language.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Thank you. Yep, go ahead, Pearlie.
is this going to open us up to having to have transgender bathrooms?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Morrison, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Thanks.
And that was my next question as well. Vivian, can you?
Well, I think the discussion when we get to talking about adding this in, then we can bring those facts forward. I just think that when I brought this forward, I believe it was important that the city represent to the public where we stand of equal opportunity and equal rights for all, no matter what you may be of any color, race, gender, or gender identity question. But so I think that's a conversation we can have when we start processing this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian.
Yes, Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, Bobby.
Yes, Vivian, thank you for bringing this forth and updating it. And I'm in support of this ordinance or resolution, I guess. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Mr.
Bobby.
Mayor.
John?
Yeah, I'm in support of this resolution also. I don't think anybody should be discriminated in for employment, regardless of what type of person or how they look or anything else. If they're qualified to do the job and do a good job, they should be able to get it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Yeah, and I think just to clarify, I mean, this is a resolution reaffirming what we have now. The way I understand this, no language has been changed. Nothing has been changed currently. I think if that plan, like I hear Vivian saying, moving forward, work with the manager and then work through the public process with the council and the public to try to maybe update our language, bring some things that are more relevant now in this day and age. And I don't imagine that, I don't know when that language was updated last, but I understand where this is going. So I think she's just looking for some reaffirmation on this current policy that we already have in place. So let's see, does anyone from the public have any questions or comments?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and bring it back to council then for any final comments or action.
Yeah, I make a motion to accept resolution 22-09.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to accept resolution 22-09 from Sweat, second from Rojas, and we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor, Sweat,
Aye.
Colberg,
Aye.
Morrison,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Nathan.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. All right. Go ahead and go to item K2. This is resolution 22-10, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Soldovia, Alaska, formally recognizing the Soldovia Permanent Fund principal balance of $540,144 and authorizing the opening of a second account for the Soldovia Permanent Fund and a third account for American Rescue Plan Act funds received by the city at the Alaska Municipal League local investment pool. This will be found on page 36 of your packet, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So on page, oh, sorry, my computer froze. On page 38 of your packet is a memo to accompany the resolution. So I'd encourage council to flip to page 38. It just discusses the history of the city's AMLIP account, because as of now, AMLIP, which stands for the Alaska Municipal League Local Investment Pool, has the permanent fund dollars as well as other funds commingled together. And the permanent fund has very strict guidelines by municipal code of how it should be managed and invested and used. And so commingling the funds may not be in the city's best interest because it can make it difficult with staff turnover or council turnover to ensure the management of the funds per the guidelines of Soldovia Permanent Fund. And that's just one example. So this resolution first establishes the fact that the principal balance of the Soldovia Permanent Fund is $540,411 or 144. And that's because $30,000 was used from the permanent fund to support the harbor kiosk project. So the city owes $30,000 back to the permanent fund at a later date, and that's mentioned here in this resolution. It also discusses the fact that the certified audit statements are different than the finance reports that staff have been bringing before council. And that's because the certified audit statement for FY20, the auditors use the permanent fund balance to offset the deficit in the general fund. And so technically the audit should have showed when you're looking at the permanent fund balance, 570, 144,000, but instead it showed 153,000. And that's because our general fund has a deficit with the liabilities, including the depreciation of city assets. And so this resolution is a testament from the council, just saying we're going to recognize the principal as 540,144. We're going to open a second account within the Alaska Municipal League Local Investment Pool. And we're going to move the permanent fund dollars into that account. And we're going to call it Alaska Municipal League Local Investment Pool Soldovia Permanent Fund. So that way there's no confusion in the future of what dollars are permanent fund, what dollars are something else. Then council is going to work to name those remaining funds in the original account. It could be something like major maintenance and repair funds, rainy day funds, but just ensure that those funds have a designated use. And then at a later date, council can talk about if it would like to see the Soldovia Permanent Fund principal managed in a different way that can take on more risk versus what we're doing now in order to generate more revenue. So for example, if we were to stay with our current investment strategy, which is outlined in Title 12 of Code, which is included in the packet, we would be seeing a return of 1 to 2%. If we amended code, if Soldovia City Council amended code to consider other options of both stocks and bonds, we could see a return of 5 to 7% over a more significant amount of time. So the way it was explained to me is if we only invested in bonds and we took 540,000 in 10 years, we could only be seeing 640,000 versus if we did a more aggressive investment strategy, we could see 940,000. So it's a more significant difference that the council should consider. So this resolution gives us the permission to separate the commingled funds, create that account. Council can talk about how it wants to manage the principal at a later date. And then in order to ensure that the ARPA funds the city received are used appropriately, taking that money out of our Wells Fargo account, putting it in AMLIP. So that way we ensure that we're using the COVID relief funds in a way that's appropriate by US Treasury. So those are the significant changes that this resolution would make happen. And then in addition to the memo that's included on pages 38 and 39, I'd like council to look at page 40 of your packets, which just shows the Soldovia Permanent Fund. And I can share my screen just so that participants online can see this too. Can I get permission to share screen? So included in your packet is a bar chart that looks at the Soldovia Permanent Fund from its inception. So once the city opened an account to manage it back in 1996, the blue bar that you see is what the audited statements said the Soldovia Permanent Fund should be. The orange bar is the Merrill Lynch account, ending fund balance as of June 30. And then the gray line that you see is the key bank account that the city opened through AMLIP in 2005. And I do not know the reasoning why the city opened the account in 2005. I asked the former administrator, city manager Cameron, about it. She didn't know either. But we had that account open in 2005. And this just gives you a snapshot picture of the health of the fund. And I think the most important thing to note in this whole bar chart portrayal is that according to Soldovia Municipal Code, if the city uses the principal of the Soldovia Permanent Fund, it has to pay that back. And then secondly, any interest generated by the permanent fund at the end of the year, that becomes principal. So ideally, we would have seen the blue bar growing. And if it went down because the city used it, there should have been a repayment plan associated with that. So our auditors recommended we open a second account to hold the Soldovia Permanent Fund dollars. And I've been in conversations with the Alaska Permanent Capital Management firm, which manages the city of Kenai's permanent fund dollars, the city of Soldotna's permanent fund dollars, the Kenai Peninsula Borough's money, the state of Alaska's money, and they currently manage our money in AMLIP. And I've been hoping that they were going to give a presentation in September, initially July, then it got postponed to September. And now because of their availability, it's going to be October, which will be great after the election. So they can talk to the council about how they've been seeing the city use the permanent fund over the past decade or so, and different investment strategies that the city could consider to grow the amount of money that's in that fund right now. And that is all I have, unless there's questions from the council.
Thank you, Rachel. Yep. Any questions, comments? George, go ahead.
Would it make sense to designate the interest coming off that as part of it becoming principal and part of it being used for other things? A good investment I see is a good revenue stream for the city, but if it's all going into the permanent fund, it isn't really that usable to us. How about if we split the interest half and half, or 25% and 75%, something like that, so that it does produce a revenue stream for the city that could be used to pay our bills?
Through the mayor, council member Nathan, that is the perfect question for the work session coming up in October.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think that action would have to be done under a separate, not under this resolution.
Right.
Obviously, it would have to be done to change our code. So, yeah, but yeah, I mean, good point. I mean, eerily familiar with what the state's going through right now. The exact same thing. So, yeah, there's no issues with the fund.
And the state actually has a surplus, despite what they say.
Mr.
John, go
Mayor,
ahead. Yep, hang tight. Go ahead, John, and then I'll come back to you.
I like this. I like separating that and getting it away from our general fund. That for me has just been confusing because it covers up all of the losses. And I think it's going to be a good thing. I'm in support of it.
Thank you, John. Go ahead, Bobby.
okay, first off, I'm going to say a couple negative things as usual. It's my personal opinion that this fund has been around forever, like a decade and plus. And I believe if we really understood it, it would not be in the shape it's in right now. That being said, by that, I mean, it could have been invested, it could have gained interest. From what I understand and was told previously, this fund has gained absolutely almost no interest. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, council member Sweat, actually, the fund has gained interest. If you look on, let me pull it up here, page 41 in your packet, you can see what the balance of the permanent fund was according to our audit and how it's grown. And it just shows you the Merrill Lynch account up until 2011. So you can see, let's just take, for example, fiscal year 1996. The Merrill Lynch account reflected there was 569,000 in there, then it grew to 606, then it grew to 752. And then the city could have been putting additional funds in there, but bonds used to be generating more interest than they are now. So as shared at previous council meetings, we've been making about $6 a month on the Soldovia Permanent Fund because the bond market has been so terrible. And in fact, the only reason why we're making $6 a month is because we can't lose money on our investment. So the people who are managing our money aren't charging their full services. And so it's coming out to be $6 a month.
So that's the interest we gain on that.
As of today. But in the past, we have had much more substantial gain of interest.
Okay, well, $6 a month is not much. Anyway, I've had a very difficult time trying to understand this. I've asked questions over the years about this permanent fund. Anyway, that's just my personal opinion. I'm having a tough time with it. On a positive note, I appreciate what you're doing as far as separating all these funds. I don't think they should all be lumped together because that makes it, at least for somebody like me, even harder to understand. So I am happy to see that you're moving forward with separating them and having separate accounts for all these funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I'm in full support of resolution 22-10. I think it's about time that we separate these accounts and they are recognizable for what they are. And then at a later date, we can work on how to make them work better for us. But I appreciate the time putting forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Any other questions, comments before we go to the public? Okay, anyone from the public or online that wishes to comment on resolution 22-10?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and bring it back to the council for final action on resolution 22-10.
Make a motion that we adopt resolution 22-10.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to adopt resolution 22-10, second by Colberg. All those in favor, Sweat,
I,
Colberg,
Aye.
Morrison,
Night.
Rojas,
Aye.
Peyton,
I,
Nathan.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 6-0. All right, we're gonna go ahead and take a quick, let's just call it 10 minutes because it'll be 10 minutes. Let's try to be back in 10 minutes. So, and then we can all get down to a discussion on one of our favorite topics, paid parking. This should be fantastic. Okay, we'll stand in recess for 10 minutes.
working on it. They took off and moved all of them.
We still recording? We're good. Okay, we'll go ahead and come out of recess, back to order. We're going to be on item M, new business discussion regarding paid parking at the Soldovia small boat harbor city streets. Remember, this is only a discussion tonight. We're not going to solve all the world's problems, but open to some good discussion on this. As obviously there's been a presentation put together. We'll go ahead and turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. So the discussion tonight, parking fees within the city of Soldovia. So I thought I would start out this presentation with what are some of the benefits to charging parking fees? Of course, generating revenue, so motorists help pay for the local parking and roadway facilities they use. It ensures that motorists, including non-residents, help finance local road and parking facilities, and then it gives us revenue that we can reinvest into the community. It also helps offset the amount of an increase the city may need to charge for the use of the harbor. So for example, if you tied parking to harbor users, that could be one way where you're not increasing the moorage rates because you have a parking fee. It also helps make sure that parking spaces are always available. So people are coming and going out of parking lots or parking spaces more frequently. It also discourages uses such as illegal camping, vehicle abandonment, and irregular use. And then, of course, this component, which I don't think would significantly apply to Soldovia, but underpriced and free parking distort travel decisions. So studies have found that free parking can increase the drive alone rate for commute trips by as much as 50%. But because in Soldovia, we don't have public transportation, we don't have huge congestion issues, that might not be as much of a consideration. So those are some of the benefits to charging parking fees. Now, what are some of the consequences associated with implementing paid parking? Of course, you can discourage people from visiting downtown Soldovia, so you have a loss of customers, decrease in economic activity. You also have an increase in staff time. So the harbor master and harbor staff, as well as the chief of police, they can experience an increase in staff time for enforcement. You can also have spillover impacts. So you cause motorists to park in other areas of the city, which could cause congestion elsewhere. This also places a financial burden on motorists, particularly those with lower incomes. It gives a general unhappiness and distrust of government, such as perception that taxes are excessive, services are poor. And then also you can create a high expectation from people. So because you are charging them, they're now saying, where is my money going? So those are some of the consequences associated with paid parking. So to start off tonight's discussion, I'd like to hear from the council. What problems does the council want to address with parking policies in Soldovia, and specifically paid parking policies?
Okay, let's go ahead and open it up.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Vivian.
Problems. Okay, I guess what I would like to concentrate on, I think the harbor itself is, as we talked about tonight, is running at a deficit. So I think whatever we can do to bring in revenue, lost revenue, and I believe there's lost revenue because I look at all those cars parked down in the parking lot looking towards the harbor day in and day out, all summer long, 20 plus cars. And I'm thinking, gosh, people might want to pay to be able to park there. And I think it's a lost revenue. And we keep on talking about budget. We keep talking about raising taxes, doing this, doing that. And I'm looking at a place that I think people would be happy to pay to be able to park their car there, or at least contribute. And that, again, it hits people not just within the city limits, it hits people who live out the road or visitors or whatever. Employees that run on the fast ferry, they've got a free parking lot. So I believe it's something that we need to do as a responsible city council. And I don't think it needs to be, my idea is going through one section at a time. And I think there's other council members maybe who also just slow it down a little bit and look at what we're talking about for paid parking in just this side of the refuse running towards the pavilion in that area. And then there's other areas that we may want to consider, but I just think it's being responsible. Homer Harbor, they charge for parking. I mean, everything can't be free. And we're looking at revenue, that's potential revenue. And yeah, I believe it should go back into the harbor fund because that's the one that needs the money and it's the harbor users. That's all I have for this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian.
Can I ask a, through the mayor?
Yep, go ahead, Harmony.
Is part of, I think it's already included here, that part of that fund is, so those parking lots would be included in the small boat harbor fund as part of the allocation. So if we're collecting fees, then we're putting money back into that area, correct?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Payton, that would be a council decision, but that's what I would recommend is specifically because it is tied to the harbor, putting that revenue generated back into the boat harbor special revenue fund.
Excellent. Okay, well, that would be something that I think would be obvious. That's what I got for the moment.
Okay, George?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. How did you calculate these expenses? I think we have a policeman on duty and we have a harbor master on duty and we're going to be paying them whether they look at the parking lot or not. It seems to me that's
Through the mayor, Councilmember Nathan, you're getting ahead of me just a little bit, so I can go more in depth on that once we get to that slide. I promise. Right now, I'm just curious to hear from the council what parking policies you want to address. Like, why should the city even be entertaining the idea of paid parking?
well, I think we should be entertaining the idea as the Queen of Kings said, we should be looking for a little more money. We could provide a parking spot for everybody that has a slip on the paved parking that's right there at the harbor master's office. You still have got a large parking spot that there's at least 20 cars in there just about all the time in the summertime. We could put marks on the ground for very little, use lime like marking a football field, put up a camera, a game camera that works on a motion sensor or some other way, or just a TV monitor that would make a tape up on a pole somewhere so you can keep track of who's in and out of there. These are all local people. Nobody brings their car here from out, very few people bring a car here from outside. The car is here. Maybe in the wintertime they keep it out at the airport, but generally they're vehicles that are here all the time. So I think we can find them all right. The police chief can run their license plate if nothing else, but we ought to be able to monitor the thing pretty well just by using electronic means. And again, it should be fairly inexpensive to get in business. The other thing we might think about is a concession type of deal. Find some young fellow that wants to have a startup business and give him a piece of the action to enforce this and take care of it. But I think it's something we need to look at seriously. Everybody I talk to says, "Oh, you've got to. That's just nickels and dimes. You've got to think of better things." Well, we get a lot of nickels and dimes, and it's not so bad. They don't want to raise taxes, and they don't want to pay for parking. What are we supposed to do? At some point, we're going to have to step off, make a decision, and start moving toward a sustainable budget.
Thank you, George. John?
Yeah, I'm not really in agreement with the city having a paid parking. They could lease that spot out to a enterprising individual, have their own parking, like say Diamond Parking in Anchorage or anywhere else. It goes against the grain with me because that is something that should be done by private enterprise. Charging people for something when it could be an individual running a business is we're operating to make money. And that's not in our area of doing things. We're a nonprofit. We don't operate to make a profit. We operate to pay the bills. And they could have lease the land, lease those out as parking lots, and somebody could run a paid parking on their own. And the city would make money off the lease. But to do that without first seeing if there is somebody out there who would do that is cutting a shortcut. Going out and doing something like a business would do is wrong. So I do not agree with it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Pearlie?
Yeah. The way I read that, what problems does the council want to address? I think problem one would be, hey, I got a boat in the harbor. I pay for slip. I should have free parking. I don't agree with that. I think they need to pay as well as everybody else, but I foresee that being a problem. Another problem is I'm paying to park down here. Where's my space? I think it's got to become on the first come, first served basis. Another problem is going to be, hey, I'm only going to be here for 10 minutes. Well, there's definitely going to be some problems that we're going to have to try to figure out. But I think the bottom line is, for me, if I had a place to park my car where it's safe, I know where it's at, and it costs me $250 a day or $250 every time I park, whether I'm there 10 minutes or all day, I think I don't think is unreasonable. I don't know about a private individual trying to do it. They might get shot. I know there's the big concern with a lot of people is on the council, and I've heard it here through the time that we've been discussing this, is how are we gonna retrieve the monies and monitor it. I think just like the airport in Homer does, there's a drop box, you pay your fee, and periodically through the day, somebody goes there and checks that. I think a camera would be nice. Oh, I didn't park in there. Well, yeah, you are. There you are, right on film. So I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill. I know there's going to be problems, but you know, where does the money go? I don't know if we can do a split in where that funding goes, but I basically would consider that highway maintenance or road maintenance. It's a lot of people use it that go to the harbor. A lot of people use it that go to the fast ferry, but there's also a lot of people that just use it for a parking spot, and there's going to be a lot of problems, I think, but I think we're losing a lot of revenue that we don't have to charge exorbitant prices to park there, but I think we're missing a pretty good little option to get a small amount of revenue in. If it comes down to the point where we lease it out to an individual, it would probably work with an individual, but I think the city needs to keep their hands on that, just so we ain't roped into a lease for 5 years or 10 years of somebody having that as a parking lot. And I just think we ought to keep control of it. But I can see a lot of problems, but in any new business or venture, you got to weed out the bugs and figure out how to make it work, trial and error. But I think as long as we ain't charging a great big fee, I think people in this town will be patient enough and realize that we need to start making some revenue. But anyway, that's my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you,
Can I go,
Pearlie.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, go ahead, Harmony.
So, I think it's a good idea for the city to charge for parking. I think that Vivian raised some really good points. I think there's some really creative ways of directing traffic flow down there. I think, like right at the top of I've thought about this a lot. Just looking around the city and thinking about how can the city recoup some of its costs in reasonable ways. I think that paid parking is something that every city in the world charges for use of their facilities. You go to Homer, you pay a parking fee. I just paid mine to park on the spit, or there are private entities, but the city of Homer does charge parking fees just like other cities, and I don't think it's unreasonable for us to pursue those opportunities. As far as like transient goes, there's that area right off the top of the ramp there where people shouldn't be parking for weekend voyages or long-term, which some people do because they're elderly and that's just convenient for them. But implementing some sort of traffic pattern down at the harbor can only benefit the city as an entity and also the people who live here. We recently had really bad incidents where somebody was living in our city parking lot and we don't really have anything in place to say, don't do that. If we start putting something down on paper that gives us the right to say, you need to pay to be here and you need to not live in your vehicle on city property. There's a way to do, I don't know, there's just a lot of ways to break down these fees. It's not up for me as an individual to make those decisions unilaterally, but I've talked to a lot of people in the community about it. You do get two sides of the conversation, but I think most people are willing to hear the fact that the city either needs to raise a lot of taxes or find ways to make its assets make money. And this is a really small way to do it. It's not going to be a lot of money, but it will recoup some of the costs of maintaining that city infrastructure. So these are all things that have already been said, but I'm in favor of this action going forward. I think we should be really mindful about how we word things and take into consideration the kiosks that are down there. I think it's in our ordinances that every business needs to have like 2 parking spaces or something. We don't want to rent out businesses and then not a lot for their traffic pattern. So anyways, those are my thoughts. I really like this. I think we should consider more things like this.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Harmony. Yep, go ahead, Pearlie.
Yeah, another major problem that I see happening, and I've talked to a lot of people about it, and well, I just won't park there. I'll park on the street somewhere. And that in turn is gonna step the Chiefs game up a little bit. If I could pay $2.50 to park over there, or I can pay whatever, $20, $25 to park over there, I think I'd probably park in the 250 spot, which will put that burden on the police department. You're parking in a no parking zone. Then what do? Do we get a bunch of signs and stick them all over the place that this is no parking? There's going to be some bugs to work out, and I don't know what the answer is, but we are part of the state of Alaska. We're not just Soldovia Village here. You can't park on a state road and just use it for parking space. That's, if you're broke down, that's a different story. You better get towed or they're going to tow you. But the staying and living in times past, I think it's time for us to step our game up a little bit and start being a first-class city. I know nobody likes that and wants, keep Seldovia like it's always been. But if we ain't growing, we're dying, and we've got to start making some revenue somehow. So I think they're all bugs that can be worked out, but there are some problem areas that are going to be frustrating to try to figure out, but they figured out how to make the pyramids. So that's, I think it's a great idea. Thought so since we started discussing it. So thanks.
Thanks, Burley. John?
Yep.
Yeah, one more thing, and you guys, some of you have heard this from me before. If you want to start enforcing parking rules, okay? If you want to enforce parking rules, we'll start with state law. Our main street and this road right out here going out to Jackaloff are both state highways. There is the liquor store down on the corner, the Linwood Bar, and SVT at the other side of town have legal parking. They have a parking lot. That lot in between the tide pool and the Linwood is the Linwoods. It's not the tide pools. Everybody else, including this building for the most part, and the library and the post office, all have illegal parking. As per state law, it is against the law to back out into a state highway. And we've went over this several times before. If you want to start enforcing parking, then by golly, there's nobody going to park out here. There's nobody going to park at the post office, the tide pool, the next building down, the boardwalk. Unless you can back up and turn around and drive into the street, your parking is illegal. Period. It's not negotiable. It's against the law to back into a state highway. And there's 3 places have legal parking. The store building had it, but it's defunct. It's not being used. So that's the dilemma you run into when you say enforcement. If you want to enforce the law, then you have to enforce the law. So think about that one.
Mr.
That's a
Mayor.
major obstacle.
Okay, thank you, John. Bobby, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I think it's interesting that I've seen all the information and all the data collected, and you know, since I've seen it, it's kind of turns out that the amount of revenue we could collect is rather small. But I think personally that if we're going to implement any kind of paid parking, I believe we should start with long-term. I don't think those people that park for 30 days plus or 2 weeks plus or whatever, mind paying a small amount to park. And I think we have enough places right now, although we could create something else for long-term parking but with the space we've got right now, we could designate a certain area for long-term parking. I think that's what we ought to start with, because it's going to be a very convoluted issue, with charging for parking and who's going to monitor it and who's going to do this and who's going to do that. So if we do anything, like I said, I think we ought to start with long-term. Thank you.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
thank you.
if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
I think this discussion is getting way more complicated than what's necessary. I think if we're not talking about enforcing rules, we're talking about designing a parking lot. We've got businesses, the Fast Ferry, who's using the parking lot. Homer charges for parking, the airport and Homer charge for parking. I think the problems I see are the lack of communication. If that's going to be the case, I think we need to communicate what we're trying to do and what we're doing. I think that the harbor master's parking lot right next to the harbor master building, that's open for parking. Some days that's only has a few cars in, the other side is packed full. So day users can park for free, whatever, over in the harbor master's parking lot. And what was said earlier, what's called the long-term 30-day, I think is in our ordinances. And it actually has rules in it that we don't even work those rules out right now. So right now we are out of compliance with what we have in our books. So to me, this is getting, and I don't agree with the numbers. I don't agree. I think it's way more. And I think the fees, George had talked about the setup costs and stuff. I think they're going to be way less. I just think that our position should be finding lost revenue. And this is one way to find lost revenue and use lost revenue. And I think there's plenty of people who wouldn't mind paying $5 a day or whatever it is. You know, I see people in there camping down in that parking area. I did it for a test to see if anybody would come and give me a hard time because I parked there last winter waiting for somebody to say, get your car out of there. No one did. In our rules, you are supposed to go talk to our city manager, or not city manager, sorry, our harbor master and say, I'm parking in there on such date. That doesn't happen. So we are out of compliance already. So why don't we set up and design a real parking lot that benefits people who go down there and park, and it benefits the city of Seldovia with some revenue? I believe that it's, as George said, pennies and nickels add up into dollars. And I find it hard to swallow that we're letting things go and not addressing them. And we have other lots. Yes, we've got some other lots where people will leave their boat trailers on them all year. That's wrong. We need to address those things. So I feel really strongly about this. And I think it's a real shame that we don't move forward with the concept of paid parking. People will understand things. Seldovia cannot just be free to everybody for everything. We need to set our guidelines. And I mean, it's not a major thing. In Homer, the spit, you don't pay, you get hauled off, or you get a citation or something. And people go, oh, gee whiz. And they work through it. They work around it. It's all very possible to take care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Rachel, you had a comment?
Mayor, if I may, if council's done with this question, I could continue with the presentation and we can finish it and then have a
Okay.
more robust discussion.
So one thing I want to do, because this could go for hours, and there's no need for this to go for hours. That's all I want to say. I mean, I appreciate this start, but I think I'm already hearing by and large positive support from everyone here. We can get into a few things. Maybe you finish the discussion and we close with some general comments. I'm going to add my 2 seconds here. What I want to do is go to the public, or maybe we let you. I'm going to give a couple points. We'll let you finish your presentation through. We'll go to the public, see if there's any public comment, and then we'll come back to council for final closing. So, because I don't want to beat this up, because we're not fixing this tonight. Problems, and same thing. I think the major thing is lost revenue. We have a number of derelict vehicles out there that have not moved all or most of the summer, which is pretty much ridiculous. We have at least 2 different vehicles that on a regular basis that camp there this year, last year. So that needs to be taken care of. In my opinion, if we're going to do this, it needs to be super simple. And I think I've heard that from other people as well. There will be some unintended consequences, as Pearlie stated, with people looking, maybe going and squatting on private property or squatting on side streets or whatever they need to do. So whatever we do, I think ultimately we just need to develop a conceptual plan. I think that's what we're looking for here, is the general consensus that we're gonna come up with a plan. It's gonna take a little while, but we need to think through it, right? Because if we just go, boom, we're gonna put this plan in place, it's gonna be a disaster, guaranteed. So if we're gonna do this and we want to have it implemented for next summer, first thing we need to do, set up some timelines of what has to happen, series of meetings, Let's get buy-in. You're not going to have everybody's buy-in. Go through it, get it done, and let's get it implemented. We're going to need time to order signage. Signage is going to take probably a month at least to get signage. There's a number of things. And then sit down and look at these fees, explore the option. I don't have a problem if maybe it's not the city, maybe it is a private enterprise that we want to do. I think all these things lead up to a good discussion. And again, we don't want to get to the point where we're, the parking Nazis, but we are missing an opportunity here. So and I think there's other areas of town. If we're going to talk about doing the 2 lots, or 3 areas by the harbor, the boat trailer lot on the other side of the liquor store, and then the north launch ramp as well. I mean, this could be full swoop. Just get these lots that we know of, talk about it, get it implemented. So that's all I got for now. Why don't you, Rachel, go ahead, finish walking us through this. And again, we know this is all, an example of what we're looking for, and then we'll go to the public, then we'll come back.
Okay, sounds great. So currently, there are areas to consider for charging parking fees. I know that the council was interested in the small boat harbor, but then the idea of spillover and people parking on streets, perhaps the council was interested in exploring citywide on-street parking. And we can skip that part of the presentation if council just wants to only focus on the small boat harbor today. So what would happen if we create a small boat harbor parking benefit district? So it could include day use and long-term parking areas by the harbor master's office. It can include not only cars, but ATVs, golf carts, motorcycles, scooters, etc. You could do 100% of the fees from the customers using the harbor and invest that revenue back into the harbor. The fees could be used for harbor beautification, including the parking and grounds maintenance of the actual facility, material costs and maintenance of the floats and staff time. And if you guys were to establish a parking benefit district where you're looking at creation of a parking lot design and plan, you may have to modify Seldovia Municipal Code. But as the mayor said, this will take time and can't happen overnight, but you'd have to look at municipal code and see what changes need to happen to titles 15 and 10. So as mentioned in previous council meetings, the Harbor's office diligently collected parking data on a regular basis from the end of May through August. So what you're seeing though are just the complete months of June, July, and August, trying to make the data consolidated. June, we looked at 13 cars per day for day parking, 18 for long parking. And then you can see what the data was for July and August, but pretty much about 10 per day, 20 long-term for parking. Coming up with an example fee schedule because I wanted council to have an understanding of expenses to revenues. And so, we were just looking at the data collected for June and what revenue could be. Say the city implements a $300 annual pass, $5 a day for day users, $30 for monthly pass options. And then there's a citation, $30 citation per day for not having a parking permit when using the harbor facilities. So then I did a bunch of data and Councilmember Nathan was asking how I came up with the totals. And so I was just looking at, you can't assume that all 18 people based in June would want to be an annual parking permit holder, especially if it was $300 a month. So I was just saying, let's say 15 of those people did that. This is the revenue we would take in. And it's important for the city to remember, you can't count annual revenue multiple times. So it's just for this 1 month. Assume that a couple of those long-term parkers wanted to switch to monthly passes instead. Assume that some of the day users, all of the day users paid for 4 days out of the month. And then assume that 2 citations were given. For June, we'd be looking at that level of revenue, a little over 5,000. Did the same thing for July, but just said no annual parking passes, more limited day users, citations still given. So that's July's revenue. Same thing for August. Did the same assumption, more conservative, of course, because my philosophy for financial management is it's better to be both practical with data, but then also more fiscally conservative and try to get either on target or a little under in terms of your revenue estimations. So here's an example of what your total revenue could look like June through August based on those assumptions. And then September through May, I just was like, assume we make $100 a month for those 9 months with sales tax. So we're looking at a total annual revenue for parking at the harbor, $6,500 based on this very rough back of the napkin calculation. Then you look at expenses. So you have to purchase things like if you did parking permit window decal program, window decals, parking permits so that staff can tell that people paid, just assuming for the whole year, 25 hours of chief of police staff time for enforcement, 50 hours for harbor master staff time for enforcement, 10 hours of my time for customer feedback. So that's just a rough estimate of total expenses, and it doesn't include the cost for making the signs and staff time from finance to manage the payments and customer service. And just to answer Councilmember Nathan's comment really quickly, we pay staff on a 37.5 work hour, 1,950 hours. If it's a 40-hour week, it's 2,080 hours. It's the same amount of hours per year to do all of the competing tasks. So by creating new work, you're taking staff away from projects that have already been demanding of their time by asking them to now do enforcement. That's just a perspective. So this is to give total annual expenses. So if we were to do net profit, where we're just going to take revenue, the theoretical revenue, subtract it from the theoretical expenses, we could be looking at a conservative estimate net profit of $2,300 for the year. Do I think there's a standard deviation to that? Do I think that there could be a few $100s more or less? Definitely. But this is just to give council an idea of what we could be looking at when it comes to establishing a fee schedule down at the harbor specifically. I'm going to pause right now because this is information concerning on-street parking. And I think that right now, since council has discussion about focusing just on the harbor, I'm going to skip going over this information for the on-street parking. So now, how would payment be made? So the least time-intensive process for customers as well as staff could be a parking permit option, where staff just come on their own. Like Councilmember Nathan said, there's a fee box they can pay and take a rip-off envelope tab. They can talk to the harbor master's office or the city office to buy a more long-term annual pass. But this will take time for staff to administer. So, okay, last slide. In terms of next steps regarding this topic, there are a whole lot of things that council needs to consider. For example, do you want a public information campaign to involve the public and feedback? What's your timeline for a parking fee rollout? We have to change code possibly. There's amendments to the fee schedule. Do you want to do things that encourage commerce? Because there'll be this perspective of, oh, well, I just don't want to come down anymore. So do you want to consider different things like a free day of parking? Let's skip the street parking question. What about ferry users or people that come to Seldovia? What would we do if they didn't know that there was a parking permit enforcement? When would you want to have enforcement occur? Do you want it 24/7? Do you want set times and days? Do you want to require all harbor slip users to purchase a parking permit? Do you want to give them a discount because they already have a slip? Do parking fees include boats? So if people park their boat in the harbor, would that count? What else? Any other information that would be helpful? And I believe that is the last slide, aside from the resources I used in order to get this presentation ready for council. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Anyone from the public have any comments, questions on the parking discussion, paid parking discussion?
I don't see any hands at this time.
Okay, no hands. All right. We'll bring it back to council for any final comments or suggestions on how to move forward on this, and what you guys would like to see.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Well, I think this is a work in progress, and I'd like us to go through the process of what Rachel had in the slides. We need to have more discussion on this. So I'd like it to see it reoccur within our agenda. And I would like to see it to move forward. So that's where I'm coming from. So however we want to put it on the agenda, work at it slowly, or does a council want to do a work session about it? Either way, I think it's important enough that we carry through with the conversation.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. Harmony?
Yeah,
Go ahead and I'll
I
get you,
think
George.
that it's always super important to get as much information to the public and get as much public feedback, I think that we should probably, I mean, there's nothing that we discussed that isn't really put out to the public, but I think that having pushing this on a regular basis on our social media is the most expedient way, maybe, or on this even more than the city website in some cases, for a week or two before we for the next meeting. Let's not keep discussing this without getting as much out to the public in a really blatant way, and then coming back with some solid concepts on how that it would break down. Because I think that this is something that's been said several times. I think people would be willing to do this. There will be some growing pains, but we're all mature people. We all know how the world works, and this is important for the city to consider. Thank you for your presentation and all the information. This is excellent. This is such a great presentation to take forward in the public.
Thank you, Harmony. George?
I think we've got a good start here. And let's get a timeline together. We'll have another work session and let's guess where we're going to be at the end of that one and so on. And I think we've got until 1st of May to get this done. It should be able to happen over that period of time. It isn't a huge emergency at this point, but like I say, if Rachel, if you could produce a timeline for the meetings over the next few months, and we'll get this hammered out.
Yeah, I think that's important, is at the next meeting, bring this back. I think that should be a priority, is to establish, work it from May 1 backwards on what it's going to take in terms of any code changes. Throw some times in there for ordering signage, et cetera. And then when do we think we would need final action and approval by to get everything implemented? That would tell us, how many meetings we're going to have or how many opportunities we're going to have to get it. And then quickly after the next, meeting or two, we're going to actually need to reinvent the wheel here. There's plenty of other parking plans that we can steal from across the state of Alaska, and quickly modify them to meet our needs. I think that's what we'll want to see, is a draft, and then that's at that point, there would be something we'll constantly gain public input throughout. But then once we have a draft plan, then there's something in writing for folks to see that gives them an idea of what we're looking at doing here. And again, it needs to be simple. That's the bottom line. I think we probably all agree on. So. All right. Anyone else? Pearlie or John, any closing comments, or Bobby? Okay. We will go ahead, and that will conclude our discussion on the paid parking for tonight. We'll move on to our last action item here. Item M2, discussion regarding the city of Soldovia's potential uses of the American Rescue Plan Act funds. This will be on page 65 of your packet. And Rachel, you can go ahead and take this away.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to share my screen here. So initially, this discussion was slated for August 9th, but we postponed it to a later date. So I'll just move through the information quickly, as some of it should look familiar from when I first discussed ARPA with the council in the past. So we got our allocation updated. Initially, AML, the Alaska Municipal League, thought that we were going to get a little over 57,000, but our allocation has since been 66,382. We will receive it in 2 tranches. So we've already gotten the first one, and then we're going to receive the second one at the end of next fiscal year. So FY23. The Kenai Peninsula Borough outlined 4 primary uses of the funds, and it's important to say that initially when the city received COVID relief dollars, those dollars were not to be used by the receiving city for revenue replacement, but with ARPA you can. So these are the 4 different areas that the borough recommended. So looking at impacts health or economic to households, small businesses, or nonprofits, providing a premium pay for essential workers, looking at covering up lost revenue, the deficit basically, and the impacts that COVID had on your municipality, or to make investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. So here's the suggestions more specifically for local government use. So how do you can make your budget whole to pre-pandemic levels of service by replacing lost revenue. You can clean up any outstanding debt. You can provide targeted aid to businesses or residents in need. You can work with AML. They have a grant writing team, which the city, I think we paid $250 to tap into those resources. And so we could work with the Alaska Municipal League to try and access state or federal competitive grants. We could work to develop shovel-ready infrastructure projects. So an issue I have as administrator is the city does not have design work engineering plans aside from Block Street. And I'm not sure how up to date that is, where I could take those plans and then go to a grant agency and say, this is a shovel-ready project. All we need is the money. I don't have that. By code, the city is supposed to have a capital improvement plan in addition to a budget. I asked the city clerk to find for me when the last capital improvement plan was entertained by the city, and there is none that she could find. So it makes it difficult for me because I don't have council input as to what major capital projects specifically you want the city to take on. I know you identified your council priorities, but I don't have the resources I need to then take that and go to a governmental agency like the EDA and say, look, I have everything in place. You just need to fund this. So we can take the ARPA funds to hire engineers to help us think through those things. So that's another idea. We could partner with schools and tribes on water, sewer, and broadband improvements. We could try to think through public health measures for economic rebound. And we can work on rental assistance or childcare stabilization. So those were what the Alaska Municipal League suggested governments consider. And this is just another version of that same information, but not bullet pointed. So suggestions for the city of Seldovia specifically. In FY21 in the amended budget, we had a budget category entitled Unfunded COVID-19. So to share this insight with council, US Treasury said COVID relief dollars could not be used for revenue replacement, but they gave us one exception. They said your public safety personnel expenses could go onto the coronavirus relief funds. So I had the city redirect the use of the COVID funds to cover the chief of police's salary. So that way our general fund didn't have a significant hit. But what did that do? That meant that the city manager's time from the past as well as now, city clerk's time, harbor master's time, finance officer's time, and managing COVID for the city, those expenses didn't get covered. So there was still a hit to the general fund and the harbor, but not as significant. So it was a success to be able to do that. However, there was still unfunded COVID expenses. We could look at replacing lost revenue. We could look at funding capital projects or engineering services. And we could look at addressing negative economic impacts by partnering with the Seldovia Chamber of Commerce to look at advertising Seldovia and assisting with community promotion and economic recovery. So there are caveats and really strict stipulations about how you replace lost revenue. You have to prove to the Treasury, the US Treasury, about how you calculated that dollar amount. So I couldn't just look at our budget and say, we budgeted this, but we only made this. So please give us the permission to use ARPA funds to make up our deficit. It has to be a calculation. And so I've asked the Alaska Municipal League to work with our finance officer to make sure we're calculating what lost revenue the city could experience. Same thing with water and sewer infrastructure. There are stipulations about how you can use the ARPA funds for water and sewer infrastructure, but we could work with those stipulations to make sure that a project the city was interested in working on met their conditions. Same thing with broadband, and I'm going through this quickly, and I'll ask the city clerk to post this presentation on our website, and it's very similar to what council saw in the past, but just showing you guys that the information is out there about how the ARPA funds can be used. So I'm coming to council. I need your guidance and input. Do you want me to continue having the finance officer work with the Alaska Municipal League to see how we can use the ARPA funds to replace our lost revenue? And do you want to see how much of our previously incurred expenses could be used for ARPA? And or do you want us to figure out how the ARPA funds can fund sewer and water infrastructure upgrades? So, for example, council wanted us to consider mapping the water and sewer infrastructure, but I told council, hold off, like, we don't have the staff to do that. You have to know GIS in order to map the infrastructure. Let's see if the nonprofit can delay that work in considering the city of Seldovia until later. Well, they're ready. They emailed the city and said, we have the capacity to take the city on for this fiscal year. So does the council want to use ARPA funds to hire a temporary staff member that knows GIS so that they can work with the nonprofit, because our current staff do not have that capacity or capability? So that's an option. Do you want the city to develop a capital improvement plan? So that way we have an actual battle plan for what capital projects we need to address. Also, ARPA funds could be used to evaluate extending water and sewer infrastructure projects to areas that are not in city limits and consider annexation. Does the city want to use, council want to use ARPA funds for that? I think an important thing to note is that not all expenses were covered by that COVID relief fund money. So for example, we didn't have funding left over for the shower work at the fire hall, in addition to very expensive TV and presentation equipment that was bought by fire and EMS to help with remote training. That actually never got covered by COVID. We just received the bill from our tech guys, and it's, I think, at least $2,000. It's an unanticipated expense, and I don't know why that didn't get billed to us sooner, but we just received it. So that's a question for the council to consider, along with partnering with the Chamber of Commerce, buying COVID take-home tests for the community. I mean, how would you like to see staff explore the use of the ARPA funds, knowing that we have a little over 33,000 this year and 33,000 next year? And it's very important to know that we are not in a rush to spend it. So per the stipulation of the period of performance in the agreement documents, which were in your packet, we have until December 31st, 2026. So council can wait and say, you know, there could be an opportunity where we could leverage these funds at a later date. Let's hold off for now, see what other COVID relief money comes out, see if we can figure out a grant writing situation. So we're not in any rush to expend the funds. And that's what I have for you tonight.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Questions, comments from council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, George.
could we use this to replace money in the permanent fund that we've already spent, for example, for sewer lift pumps that we've already bought?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Nathan, those weren't purchased with permanent fund dollars.
I guess that's not what I'm asking. We bought the sewer lift pumps.
Right.
Can we repay ourselves with this COVID money for those sewer lift pumps?
I can look into that.
Just as a general rule of thumb, I'd rather see us spend this on a hard asset rather than mapping the water system or some soft requirement that we don't really have at this time. I think buying those lift pumps, if we could do that, would be a good use for this. It was to spend about $40,000 there, huh?
Through the mayor, I can't remember how much we spent on those pumps. We did not move forward with purchasing pumps for the slough lift station, so we still have those as an outstanding purchase to make. And because our best practices score has been insufficient with the state, we don't qualify for those state revolving loan funds that have up to a 75% loan forgiveness. So I want to say it was somewhere to the tune of either $8,000 or $16,000 a pump, but I honestly can't remember.
Yeah.
But I can look into that and report back.
Well, again, I just think purchasing some hard asset would be much desirable rather than, I think trying to replace lost revenue is going to open a can of worms that we don't want to get into. It's just too easy for the government to say, well, whoops, that's the wrong thing. I don't know how we justify what our losses were as far as, say, sales tax revenue. Be better if we could spend it on something that's renewable, repairable, and that we need now.
Okay, thank you, George. Vivian?
Yeah, I realize we have quite a bit of time to decide on what we want to do with this and the great ideas and presentation given forward. I guess one of the things I'd like to know is how much money, because I know that we've had unfunded COVID monies. Do you have that number? Is that 92,000 that we're talking about? So to me, I would say that maybe we need to look at how we make ourselves solid and whole again, as opposed to possibly relying on $66,000 for leverage for a capital project. Anyhow, we have a lot of time to discuss this, but if we're still talking about being made whole again, this could be one of the avenues to get us there. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Anyone else? Questions or comments on use of the ARPA funds? Okay, we'll go to the public. Anyone from the public wish to comment on use of the ARPA funds?
Not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and bring it back to council. Yeah, and the one good thing is, yeah, we don't have to decide this tonight, but we definitely, looks like we have a number of options here for the use of these funds. So any other final questions, comments for the manager tonight, Harmony?
Yeah, I was wondering what your annexation process looks like. Seems like $30,000, $60,000 wouldn't cover that project. Like, what does that entail in your mind?
Through the mayor, thank you, Councilmember Peyton, for the comment. So it's something that other cities are looking at too, is if there are properties within very close location to existing infrastructure. So therefore it wouldn't cost that much for the city to extend the service. Evaluating with the developer, like in conjunction with the developer, possible annexation so that you're increasing the limits of the city. So you have more property tax revenue coming in while simultaneously extending those services. So for Soldovia, it could be having CRW or an engineering firm come in and ensure that our water distribution system, despite all the leaks and other issues that there could be with the distribution system, could support an additional 40 households, 50 households coming online with city water or city sewer. So it's just evaluating if there was a project, would it be feasible with what we have? Or do we need to first revamp our distribution system or do something else to our system before we could support something like that?
Okay, thank you. And then my next question is, as far as the benefit of mapping our water system, I feel like we heard a lot from Public Works on how that would be beneficial to the city staff to be able to locate infrastructure when there's an issue without having to pull out big piles of maps that may or may not be accurate. Is that the extent of that project?
No, Councilmember Peyton. So, and that was one of the reasons why I told the city to consider holding off on it, because what the nonprofit RCAC was going to do is just work with current knowledge of the infrastructure. So they don't actually have equipment that can go in our system and actually show the lines physically where they are. So it would be like, okay, we know that there is a key box here. So we are going to take a GPS coordinate load that coordinate into GIS, and then we're going to show on a map, this is where the key box is. So it's information that staff already has, and therefore wasn't necessarily expanding our awareness, but it would be helping compile it.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Harmony. Any other closing comments or questions for the manager tonight? Okay. I don't know if you got much direction there, but
Well,
yeah,
council's decision of allowing us to open a third account in AMLIP and move these monies into AMLIP is great, because now it's not commingling with general fund dollars. And so into the future, the city will be very easy to track what expenses get applied and what council actions happen in order to ensure those funds are meeting the US Treasury guidelines. So you got 5 more years basically to decide how you'd like to use those funds. And I think I may still have the finance officer work with AML to see what revenue replacement could look like for us, to see if we can offset the deficit that the city experienced last year as a result of COVID. And I can bring that information to council if you'd like to consider that. And then if there are grant projects in the future that the city might be well positioned to receive, then ARPA could be a good solution for funding a grant writer or leveraging other resources for the city.
I think it's a good idea to probably move forward with getting that information. I mean, it's certainly not going to help to have additional options and, information available to the council. Yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of you guys moving forward. If it's, if it's not a ton of time and it's something that, we can passively work on, we've got plenty of time. Now, one thing I noticed is there is, on some of these, you might have to obligate within the next couple of years, and then the period of performance takes us out to
True.
2026. So
Yes.
we'll just have to be conscious of that. So, but it looks like, yeah, we do have plenty of time. And then, like you say, starting authorizing the use of the third account, getting that into some sort of interest bearing account. If we're allowed to do that, and that makes perfectly good sense. And basically, we know we have some rainy day funds sitting there that are going to do nothing but benefit the city going forward. So,
And Mr. Mayor,
yep, George.
just one last comment about that. But what better way to replace revenue than to pay for something we've already bought? It's clean one-shot deal rather than having to justify all this to the granting agency. You're looking to replace that $30,000 and having to justify where the revenue went, where if you just paid for, say, a sewer lift pump that we've already spent the money on, now we're putting that money right back in our account. So we've replaced, the money that we spent, which is maybe better than replacing revenue that they would have to justify, just as a thought.
Okay, thank you. All right, that will go ahead and conclude our discussion on the potential use of the ARPA funds. Go to item N, city manager's report. This will be in the laydown on page 87, which is actually the regular pack. Well, the whole
Yes, so you're
thing's-
able to get it in
Yeah.
before the packet
It's
went
in the
live.
regular packet.
Okay. All right. And this is a long manager's report, but we didn't have a second meeting in August and a lot happened. So I'm just gonna try and move through it quickly. There was additional information that council wanted on the spruce bark beetle mitigation resolution. So that's included in the packet for your consideration. Enclosed in your packet is a after action report regarding the tsunami and additional steps the city should consider for improving its response and working in conjunction with the Susan B. English School principal. And so included in the after action report, aside from the list of improvements or suggestions, is steps that every staff member takes when there's a tsunami warning. So council can get a sense of how staff responds, as well as the press release that went out about it. And then a thank you letter that the city wrote to the borough maintenance staff, because they were very instrumental in making sure our response the community's response was excellent. And so those are included as enclosures to the manager's report. I got feedback from council. They're asking, what was the city doing as far as the cellular service outage, or what did we know about it? And so I contacted both ACS and GCI and just expressed my disappointment that our telecommunications partners did not proactively contact the city with the information. And so ACS was a great partner and said that they wanted to meet and talk about it further. And so we had a great meeting, and which we confirmed that the issue wasn't with ACS at all, but with GCI's equipment. I still haven't heard back from GCI regarding that outage. And just gave the city additional things to think about in terms of improving our internet access. Because in our council meetings, the internet drops. But regardless, they're not involved in cellular service in Soldovia, it's GCI. The chief of police, there's a new work schedule going into effect on September 15th. You can find that memo on page 110 in your packet. So I was told that prior to my arrival, when council was hiring a new chief of police, there was discussion about finding an additional officer to reprieve or coming up with alternate work schedule or something to that effect. And so because we don't have the budget to sustainably support an additional officer, and I'm happy to provide council with a more in-depth budget breakdown if you'd like. I've been trying to explore other options. So I'm hoping I can meet with SVT regarding a VPSO in Soldovia. So that would be a backup officer, but for the meantime, my solution to trying and coming up with a more sustainable work schedule is I looked at the call volumes for each day of the week over a period of 6 months, and that data was provided by the chief of police. And then I had him generate that same information for severity of calls, and surprisingly, Saturday and Sunday had the least amount of calls and the least amount of severe calls. And so I'm moving forward with his schedule being amended so that he will not be on duty Saturdays or Sundays, and that instead will be a responsibility of the troopers. And I'm happy to answer more questions on that, but there's more detail and data in your packet on page 110. Please mark your calendars for September 29th from noon to 2. The troopers are coming to Soldovia, so they're going to be having a panel presentation with the chief of police here in Soldovia to answer questions about how local law enforcement works in Soldovia and answer any additional questions the council may have. I asked the Alaska Municipal League's Greg Russell to be a facilitator of that discussion, so that's in the works. Council didn't meet in time to submit formal comment to the Alaska Marine Highway System, and so I drafted a letter for council's consideration in the packet, and that got submitted to the state, and it's regarding their summer 2022 schedule. It's also important to note that Commissioner McKinnon is no longer, so DOT now has a new commissioner, Commissioner Ryan Anderson. So I have a health update for the city, cost savings of over $13,000. As soon as the city got on its new health plan, I started exploring, do all of our employees need to be on the health plan, or could we remove some of those employees? And sure enough, because the city doesn't pay for 100% of city healthcare costs, because employees contribute 20% of the healthcare costs, we were able to offer a stipend in lieu of people being on city health insurance plan. And so that saves the city this year $13,700, in addition to the cost savings we made happen by shifting to the Alaska Municipal Health Trust versus being on the bankrupt, going out of business lifestyle health plan based out of Kansas. So that's a big success for the city. The city's working with AMLJIA to secure a new medical director. So if medical director for fire EMS, we can't provide the majority of emergency response services to the community. So just letting council know we're still working on that. The city has entered into a contract with Carmen Jackson Bookkeeping Services per auditor's recommendation. So our auditors were initially supposed to come, I believe, in August. They proactively reached out and said, hey, your books aren't ready yet. Here's someone who can help you that has rural municipal finance experience. It still falls within our budget authority for the audit. And so we've just entered into an agreement and our finance officer is already working with them to get us caught up to speed, because I would love for council to have the certified financial audit by December. So that way, when you're looking at the FY23 budget adoption and creation, you have audited FY21 information. So it's a personal goal of mine, but it's contingent on us being able to be ready for their visit. On page 121 of your packet is a memo updating the council about the planning commission composition. So council had a lot of discussion about what the borough mayor was possibly proposing to make happen for the planning commission. In short, no, the attorney general will not issue opinions to municipalities regarding issues. No, I contacted our legislative offices to see if they could use ledge legal resources to help us, and they said no. I contacted a nonprofit that gives mainly civil cases free legal assistance to ask if they would help Soldovia, and they said no. So council told me they don't want to spend city attorney fees on this. And if you look in the memo, there's a breakdown of our remaining budget left for legal services if council wants to ask our city attorney for that advice. But my recommendation is to wait, because the borough mayor hasn't introduced anything formal yet. And when he does, I know at least one city is going to have a formal response to that. And so rather than Soldovia spend resources right now, we can wait and see that the bigger cities, city attorneys write their own legal memos. So I await council's direction on what they'd want to see happen there. We're going to get a new table for council. It's called a dais. It's shaped in a U fashion. I think it'd be excellent for fostering more Socratic seminar style discussion, and we can make better use of the space. We just have to figure out how to get it here. So the city of Homer is donating it at no cost to the city of Soldovia. They were very happy to make it go to a good cause. The Boy Scouts built it for their council. And so it's just a great gift and gesture from the city of Homer. So we just have to get it here, but hopefully that'll be before the ferry ends. Our cemetery grant got extended and our website got improved. Please check it out. Amazing effort was done from our city clerk and PIO extraordinaire Heidi Gagel to make that happen in conjunction with the volunteers. So that was excellent. COVID-19, we still have masking in place because per council's motion, masks are to be worn when the CDC still shows high community transmission in the Kenai Peninsula Borough. And I checked even just a couple hours ago and it's still high. The whole state of Alaska is red basically. So that's still in place. I was able to get COVID tests from the state. So now we can test city staff and first responders and patients that board an ambulance if they're suspected of being COVID positive. Now we can test them. So that's an excellent improvement. And I wish we'd have done that sooner. And then included the updated test results from SVT. And in your packet is their new testing guidelines or current testing guidelines. Okay, just a little bit longer here. The Public Works Department, it's been restructured. It's so far going very well. We now have 3 public works staff as opposed to 2. This is because the top candidate the city chose to be the public works operator 1 only wanted to be part-time. And as a result, part-time employees don't get other payroll liabilities such as retirement or insurance. So with that difference, we are able to then hire a 3rd public works operator 1 to assist the city. So it's great local job creation and then helping us get ahead of some of the things we've fallen behind while still remaining within our budget. And then I also want to encourage council to share gratitude towards our harbor assistant, Jim Davis, who's helping with refuse collection through the winter. And that's because our former refuse collector line handler, Jeff Pappenfuss, left the city. We're going to work on a new meet and greet for council and the city staff, with a possible new day being Alaska Day. I received a scholarship so that I could attend a conference. It's through the International City County Managers Association, and I wasn't even thinking about going until a mentor told me that I should apply. So I'm one of 3 recipients to get it, and so it means it won't have a cost impact to the city other than my staff time. And part of the scholarship is that I have to post on our city's Facebook each day, things that I'm learning. And so that'll be on our city Facebook coming up. I was happy to see Walt Sonnen in the chamber because he was asking me about the city and oil spill response partnerships. And so we had our new safety officer facilitate an emergency response learning session on oil spills. And we're going to be talking about earthquakes in October. And then here's a whole slew of things from KPED. There's a grant that Special Projects Manager Cassidy Cameron suggested the city look at. Tim Dillon, the executive director, will be at your next council meeting. And then as a way to help the kiosk project move forward, I asked KPED if they would come present on small business resources that they know about to see if we could maybe start some entrepreneurship and support that with the harbor kiosks. I'll be attending their KPED board meeting in person, October 22nd. And then they have a great video encouraging industry available on that YouTube link. I suggest that council look at it and share the word. Tim Dillon of Soldovia is going to be leading our Gateway Pavilion beautification project in the spring or summer. I want to give a shout out to Councilmember Payton, as well as Operator Cameron and Johnny Gruber, because of all have volunteered their time. I mean, to have Jordan and Johnny after a work day go and clear the right of way and brush their own volunteer time to make that happen is outstanding. So please thank them for their efforts. Councilmember Payton helping manage Mermaid Park, even with our equipment not working right, she still managed to make some things happen. So thank you so much. Another idea from Councilmember Payton is the city's need to improve its public relations efforts. So an idea I had and talked with the principal about is seeing if we could secure a high school student where they could help us with storytelling and social media so they can get the city stories out and then hopefully get something good on their resume. We're gonna look at electricity management at the boat haul out storage yard, hopefully in the spring or summer. The 2020 census results, we're still working or waiting for that information, and it should be coming out towards the end of September. So it'll be really exciting to see what happens with Soldovia's population according to the census. And then I would like the mayor very quickly to touch on, and maybe you'll do this in council member statements, just your work on the Soldovia Fuel and Lube roof. But this is just to share that we had staff contact 10 people and businesses in Soldovia and Homer, got no yes, I'll come inspect that roof responses. So luckily Mayor Campbell did go on Labor Day and inspect the roof. So we're gonna just proceed with that. And I informed Soldovia and Fuel and Lube of the situation. So that's that. And then we have a proposed sales tax increase. I don't know why that says September 29th. It should be September 20th. So I'm sorry that that's incorrect in the manager's report. But the proposed sales tax increase is September 20th. And there's some good stats in there about our forecasted property tax and sales tax revenues compared to what actually happened. So please give that a read. And then if council could please reserve the hour before your meeting on September 27th, we're going to discuss the land use management plan and what data that staff has compiled so far. The state responded to your questions regarding the Tutka Bay hatchery, and that's enclosed in your packet. There's been a slight change to the part that the city needed to buy for the water treatment plant, which will save the city money. And then there's some comparables of the small boat harbor summer season. So just looking at revenue excluding the annuals for the period of May 15th through September 6th of 2016 through 2021, that should say. So just looking at in 2016, we brought in 25,000, 2021, we brought in 40,000. And I'll take any questions from council, and thanks for your patience as I got through that.
Thank you, Rachel. Yep, pretty long. Lots of stuff happened in the last month. So any questions or comments for the city manager? While you're thinking about that, I'll give a quick update on the roof. As Rachel said, I was using the lift over that weekend too, and had that plan. So I just did that in conjunction, ran it down to the fuel and lube was able to get up and spec that, the roof. It was in, the panels are in a lot better shape. They're actually in pretty darn good shape compared to what I thought I would see. The issue, it's very apparent, is all the translucent fiberglass panels on that roof. And I think there's 6 or 8, 6, 7, 8 on each side. And a good number of those have either holes in them or are cracked. They're just fiberglass, and basically the UV and the snow have just basically they've lived their life. So the ridge cap, the panels themselves are all in fantastic shape, although they're rusty. The metal thickness and everything is solid. The seams are solid. The ridge is solid. There's some additional leaks on a couple through the roof penetrations on the vents, some old vents, and then a couple old stacks. There's some water coming in around there. And then, of course, when the water comes in through these panels, it just migrates and kind of spreads out everywhere. And so there's a number of drips inside that building. Long term, we would need to, that thing needs, I mean, it's probably got easily another 10-year shelf life left on it. It needs a good pressure washing, and then it needs a paint job, which is not a major deal the way I see it. I mean, it just needs something to stop the corrosion on it. And then short term, we need to get some panels. That's a pretty simple profile on that roof. Get some galvanized panels fabricated to basically replace all of those the weathered skylights that are failing or have failed. I think that problem is just going to continue to get worse and worse with every winter that goes on here. So, and again, that's a very simple panel. Those can be fabricated at any sheet metal shop, and then either our guys or a contractor should be able to replace those. I'm figuring anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 in materials, and then whatever the labor is, a couple days labor for 2 guys to go up there and strip off the old ones and overlay the new ones, get them sealed up, and then that should stop all of the leaks up there. There's a couple boots that we can get for the old vent. Maybe that old vent that's not even in use, it's just cut off, sticking in a bucket, that could come out of there. I mean, that could just simply be cut off and removed, and then we have a permanent patch put over that as well. So yeah, so it's not nearly as bad, but we do need to take some action to get, as the landlord and property owner, to go ahead and get that taken care of as soon as we can and get that addressed. So yep, that's all I have. Any other questions for the manager?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Pearlie.
Yeah, I'm just gonna compliment you on doing that. I think that was a great decision. I know I talked to a couple of constituents that just didn't really understand what we were looking for a bid for, that they just didn't come and bid on it, because why would you pay an engineer money to bid something and then, or tell you what you needed when the contractor's going to do the same thing? So I'm glad you went to the effort and got that straightened out. So thanks.
Yep, appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel, for a very precise report. And Jeremiah, thank you so much for getting up there and figuring it out. And what great news that it's not a catastrophe, that it's a doable solution. That's great. Yep, thank you. Good report. Actually, I do have something. So the small boat harbor summer season comparison. So we're seeing an uptick, and well, kind of went down in 2020, explainable. But so is that with our harbor master, is she determining that from our increases in revenue from increase in mortgage rates from 20 or from like 19 up to 21?
I can ask her for like what specifically she included in that, but if there were any fee increases throughout the harbor, you would see that here, but annual mortgages aren't included.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, George.
you have in the packet here, there was a little more information about the spruce bark beetle federal plan. I mean, to me, it was government gobbledygook. What, do we have any way of finding out what exactly they're going to do? it's just scary to me to basically hand the government a blank check and tell them here, who knows what they're going to do. They come to your yard with a chainsaw. Be nice if we could find out a little more specific information about what the plan is.
Yes, Councilmember Nathan, if you go to page 101 in your packet, you'll see a really colorful breakout of the categories, the subcategories, the amount of costs. And this is how they were able to determine, the borough was able to determine how much money they wanted to request from the federal government. So it's broken out into staff time, reforestation, borough lands, municipal partners, so resource sharing with cities, landowner assistance, industry incentives, roads mitigation, I mean, you name it, the whole gamut. So I can ask for even more specific information than this, but this at least shows like how much they were estimating the cost to be in thousands in order to get to that overall expense.
Like I read all that. I don't understand what in specific they plan on doing. I mean, are they going to remove trees? Are they going to try to treat them to kill the beetles? What exactly they're going to do?
Yeah, there may be an additional document. I know I was reading that up above. I don't know if Murkowski's Act, I haven't looked at that link there, but maybe there's some additional detail in the plan if they have a plan. I think that's what you're looking for, George, is the details.
Well, it's probably nothing we can do about it anyway, but it just, to me, it's just a little scary when they're not really telling us what they're going to do. As far as I know, there isn't any insecticide or any preventive treatment that you can do for the spruce bark beetles, but I could be wrong there too.
All right. Any other closing comments? If not, we will wrap it up here. Okay. Thank you, Rachel. Item O, informational items not requiring action. The Soldovia Planning Commission will be presenting its review and analysis concerning the 2014 Soldovia Comprehensive Plan at an upcoming City Council meeting in October. And then absentee voting for the regular municipal election begins Wednesday, September 15th. So as Heidi had stated earlier, no executive session tonight. We'll go ahead and go to council and mayor comments concerning items not on the agenda. Sweat.
Yeah, thanks everybody for your hard work.
Okay, thank you, Colberg.
Thank you, everybody. It's a good meeting. Thanks staff for all your hard work on working out the future headaches. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John Morrison.
Yeah, great meeting, pretty informative. I don't know if anybody else has seen it, but that advertisement that Murkowski's got on about the big infrastructure bill, what they're going to fix and repair. I've seen nothing on the Marine Highway. Just don't understand it, why, how they can claim to be doing such a great job and just leave that out of the whole thing. It just baffles me. Great meeting. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Pearlie. Rojas.
Great meeting, everyone. Has the company that's putting up the cell tower communicated with the city as to where they are with?
Not that I know of, Councilmember Rojas, but I'm going to defer to the city clerk.
Have not had direct correspondence with Vertical Bridge, but we did have a tower engineer company apply for a building permit and ask about, not a building permit, sorry, for a business license to be able to build a tower within the city of Soldovia and ask about tax prices. So I need to respond back to them and just make sure it's for the same outfit, but
okay.
Information is indicating that they're probably working for Vertical Bridge.
All right. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vivian. Peyton.
Thanks staff for the comprehensive information and for the public who attended.
Thank you, George.
I had something written down. I don't remember what it was. There was a little blurb about the after COVID report. some time ago, I asked if we could write a letter to KBBI thanking them for doing what they did. I mean, we had a meeting with them and we asked them to do stuff and they did it, and their performance was exemplary. Be nice if we could tell them thank you.
We signed it. We signed it this morning.
Ah, super. Okay,
It's
thank you.
It's heading out. It's probably already in their hands.
Okay, good deal. Good deal.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that got taken care of. So
Great meeting, a lot of stuff, and thank you, Rachel, for your report. It was very good. Thanks.
all right, thank you. Yeah, same thing. Good meeting, everyone. Good dialogue. Got a few things that'll be ongoing. Just wanted to mention the power outage last night. Just quickly on a positive note, we charged up all our land. We figured with the winds coming in the forecast, we'd get something. Sure enough, it wasn't until 11:30, 11:40 last night, but generator worked flawlessly, obviously, last night. It was within 5 minutes, that thing turned on. Within about another 5 to 8 minutes after it warmed up, they flipped over and it worked. I mean, now we know that's the idea. That's how it should work. Not every situation is normal. Like we did have a very nice brownout as part of that too, I might add. I had lights doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but yeah, so kudos. So hopefully they're still continuing to work out some of their bugs on the system. So that's what we want to see in the future. So, all right, next meeting will be a regular meeting on September 27th. And then, but we do have a work session next week, obviously on the 20th, right? 20th also. So look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.